Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam al Nabi al Kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'een. We begin by praising Allah and asking Allah to send His peace and blessings upon the final Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all those who follow his way with righteousness until the end of time. So today I wanted to just share some thoughts about how fiqh works, just to help people to understand this topic a bit better. Uh, One of the main issues I deal with a lot in community is that people have a very surface layer understanding of what fiqh is and how it works. And because of this, people are very dogmatic about certain fiqh positions, and they treat the opinions of ulama as if it is wahi. And they end up hating on people who hold different positions. They end up making takfir of people who hold different positions, and this is problematic because it really shows on our end a lack of understanding of what fiqh is, how it works, and the spectrum of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in fiqh. Now, in reality, it takes years of study to truly comprehend, the boundaries of what are acceptable differences of opinion. And what I really just want to explain in this short video is just some of the basic steps that go into formulating fiqh opinions that will help you to understand why there are differences of opinion, and more importantly, to help you understand why sometimes one scholar will change his opinion multiple times in his lifetime. And to see that there's nothing shady about this, there's nothing sinister about this, it's just the natural part of life. It's natural part of scholarship. That people who are studying Islam all the time are going to be evolving their opinions over time as well. I mean, when I look at my own life, if I look at the opinions I held when I was 20 years old and I compare them to the opinions I hold now, I have radically changed many of my fiqh views. I mean, alhamdulillah, I've been a student of fiqh for 21 years now. I began my alim course when I was 13 years old. I'm 34 years old at the moment. So I've spent 21 years studying this. I've studied with ulama across every madhab. I even studied some of the extinct madhabs like the Zahiri madhab. Alhamdulillah, I'm still a student, and I can tell you as a student who is trying to specialize in this field and who one day hopes to specialize in this field, that it really is a field where your knowledge keeps evolving and your opinions keep changing. It's not possible that all the opinions you hold when you finish your very first fiqh book at the age of 20 or 21, that you're going to be holding the exact same opinions when you are 30 or when you are 40. Because certain things are going to change. So what changes? Well, let's first take a look at how fiqh works, and then from there I can show you what changes for the individual. So fiqh actually means understanding. This is something a lot of people don't know. The word fiqh, its linguistic meaning is understanding. We see it used like this in the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, narrated an Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiyallahu anhu, qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, may yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din. Right, so this is narrated in Sahih al-Bukhari on the authority of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever Allah intends good for, yufaqihu fi din. He gives him the fiqh of the deen. He gives him a deep understanding of the deen. So the word fiqh in the verb form in this hadith is used to mean understanding. And in its technical definition, fiqh refers to a scholar's understanding of the Sharia. It's not the Sharia. It's a scholar's understanding of the Sharia. And this is kind of something that's known amongst scholars, but not known amongst some people, is that a scholar's understanding is probably wrong. Right? It's probably wrong. It's a high probability that an individual's understanding is wrong. And this is why when scholars discuss fiqh with other scholars, they are genuinely and sincerely listening to the other person's perspective, because they have this in their mind that I could be wrong and he could be right, or I could be wrong and she could be right. And so they listen with an open mind because they have this in their mind already. This is fiqh, this is my understanding. And I could be wrong in my understanding. So perhaps he understands it better. Perhaps she understands it better. So where did I get this understanding from? Well, an individual's understanding of fiqh comes from the usulul fiqh, right? The principles and the methodology of fiqh. And I have an entire course online called the Usulul Fiqh Intensive. I'll put the link in the description, where I go in details through the Usulul Fiqh, discussing all the different methods used for fiqh. But Usulul Fiqh is essentially, it is a methodology that a scholar develops to help him to ground his opinions in the tradition, so that none of his opinions stray away from the tradition. And that whatever opinions he comes up with, they are in some way or form linked to the tradition, right? And by the tradition, I mean Islam itself. So, what are the usul al-fiqh? Well, we do know that the primary usul al-fiqh, which you all should be familiar with, are the Quran and the Sunnah, right? So, every madhab and every scholar, even those who don't follow madhabs, every scholar grounds their fiqh primarily in the Quran and the Sunnah. That their fiqh opinions come primarily from the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, there are a couple of points to keep in mind here. Number one, people differ in the interpretation of the Quran and Sunnah. Number two, people differ in the application of the Quran and Sunnah. Number three is that a lot of new things are not mentioned directly in the Quran or Sunnah. So, even though everyone takes their fiqh from the Quran and Sunnah, they are going to differ, because the understandings of the Quran will be different from each other. The understandings of the Sunnah will be different from each other. They don't have people don't have a uniform understanding of a book. And this is not a fault in the religion, this is a blessing in the religion. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah, the great caliph of Islam, who I wrote a book about recently, he has this very profound statement where he actually says that he's thankful and he is grateful to Allah that the Sahaba had different understandings of the Quran and Sunnah, and the Sahaba held different fiqh opinions from each other, because this makes it easier for the rest of us. Right? This makes it easier for the rest of us. So when we have these different fiqh, these different understandings of the Quran and Sunnah, we shouldn't look at it as a problem, we shouldn't look at it as a weakness, we shouldn't look at it as a fault, we should look at it as a blessing from Allah. That Allah wanted to make this religion easy for us, and one of the ways He made it easy for us is by leaving some room for human interpretation in the area of law, so that different scholars could arrive at different conclusions, and the average Muslim gets to choose. Right? The average Muslim gets to choose which scholar you follow. I mean, if you're more interested in a stricter form of Islam, you can follow a stricter scholar. If you're more interested in a form of Islam that's more in tune with your culture, you can follow a scholar from that culture. There are different ulama in the world who have different methodologies of fiqh, and all of them have their followings from people who are attracted to that method of fiqh. And this is a blessing from Allah. Right? This is a blessing from Allah. So we say that the fiqh comes directly from Quran and Sunnah, but people differ in how they understand the Quran, people differ in how they understand the Sunnah, but that's not the only source of fiqh. So a third source of fiqh is the opinions of the Sahaba, and particularly the ijma', the consensus of the Sahaba. So there may be something that the Prophet ﷺ did not mention and Allah did not directly mention in the Quran, but some of the Sahaba spoke about it. So we can look at their opinions and derive fiqh from that. And if they all agreed on an opinion, if they all had a consensus on an issue, then this becomes something that all of the madahib look upon as binding upon the ummah. So for example, the idea of praying Taraweeh, right? This is something that was legislated in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. But there was a consensus amongst the Sahaba that this is fine, there's nothing wrong with this. And so every madhab has Taraweeh in it, because there is ijma' on the acceptability of praying Taraweeh, right? So the ijma' is another important thing, and again, there's a lot of technical difficulties that go into this in the course. I am very, very much aware after 20 years of study of all the controversies over ijma', and I perhaps we'll discuss that in another video. Actually, I'd like to do a video on that, because this is a term that is abused a lot in our times. Lots of people claim ijma' on issues about which there is absolutely no ijma'. On the other hand, there are people who reject the concept completely. So yes, maybe I'll go into that in another video. But for now, just going back to what everyone agrees upon, the ijma of the Sahaba on certain set issues, like that is five salah, and they're called Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha, and they are two rakats, four rakats, three rakah, four rakat. That this is ijma. No one can come today and claim anything different in this area. So that much at least we all agree upon. Um, that's part of our fiqh. That's another area that we take fiqh from, which is the ijma of the early Muslims. Now, the bulk of our differences in fiqh come from what we call the rational sources of fiqh. So fiqh is divided between the revealed sources and the rational sources. The revealed sources being the Quran and Sunnah. The rational sources, every madhab has their own, but the one that's common is qiyas. Right? So qiyas means that a scholar is going to use principles extracted from the Quran and Sunnah to figure out the rulings for new things. Right? So for example, somebody invents a drug and that drug intoxicates people. People can't say, oh, this drug isn't mentioned by name in the Quran and Sunnah, so it's fine. No, we go back to the Quran and Sunnah and we say, hold on. The Prophet ﷺ said anything that intoxicates is prohibited. So making qiyas on that hadith, you will say that this drug is prohibited. Right? So this is called qiyas. So where we now take principles that we have extracted from the Quran and Sunnah, and we utilize these principles to derive rulings for new issues. And this is where the bulk of modern fiqh comes from. That the fiqh of the modern world comes from qiyas. Now again, scholars differ in how do you do qiyas. Which Quranic verse or hadith do you base it on? Which principle do you base it on? What's the correct way to interpret this specific issue? They differ in their conclusions, they differ in their methodologies. So you are going to find a spectrum of opinion on any issue that is subject to qiyas. And this is again completely natural, completely normal, and it shouldn't cause anyone to have any doubts about the religion, because it's the nature of humanity that when we are dealing with something new, each of us have a different approach and we're going to arrive at different conclusions. Now, there are a variety of other principles of fiqh that are secondarily or rational. Some of the ulama list them as part of qiyas, others list them as other approaches to fiqh. And I tend to treat them as other approaches to fiqh, some of them, and some of them as part of qiyas. So, some of these other approaches to fiqh that some of the ulama use, for example, is urf. Urf means the local culture. And another way that is formulated in the books of fiqh is al-adat muhakkama, that local culture is the deciding factor. What this means is that in issues where the ulama have difference of opinion, which are culturally sensitive, right? On culturally sensitive issues, the opinion we would go with is the one that is more in keeping with the local culture. So, for example, if there is a dispute in the masjid regarding what language the lecture should be in. So a scholar comes to the masjid, he wants to deliver a lecture. People are arguing, should he give the lecture in Arabic, in English, in Urdu, in Spanish? He's fluent in all four languages. What will be the deciding factor here is the local culture. What is the dominant language of the majority of the residents of the locality? And that will help him to decide what language to deliver his lecture in. Right? We see this in every area of life. So culture plays a role in how we dress. So in Islam, we have in the Quran and Sunnah our aura. We must cover our aura. For a woman, everything besides her face and hands, and for a man, from his navel to his knees. But beyond that, everything else is subject to urf. So, for example, for us men in the modern world, we cover our upper bodies. Now, technically, there's nothing in the Quran and Sunnah that says we should cover our upper bodies, but this is urf. This is our culture. It's considered immodest in our culture for men to uncover their upper bodies. So we always cover it. We can't even think of uncovering it because our culture plays its role in fiqh like that. Um, if we lived, for example, on a farm in India 400 years ago, we probably wouldn't even think about covering our upper bodies because it would be very hot and it's not our aura and it's not part of the culture of that time and that place for a man to cover his upper body. So in that way, you see how the local culture plays a role in how we dress. It plays a role in our business laws. It plays a role in marital law. It plays a role in many other areas of fiqh. Um, Another principle of fiqh that's found in some of the madhabs, that's a rational source of fiqh, is the attainment of benefits and the removal of harms. And there are different wordings for this in different madhabs. So some people call it maslaha, some people call it istisla. Uh, Nowadays, the term that everyone loves to use for it is maqasid sharia. um, yeah, so maqasid sharia, goals of the sharia. So one of the new approaches to fiqh that became popular in the 20th and 21st century is the maqasidi approach, and I believe this has its pros and its cons, and I really think a lot of people tend to take it beyond what's acceptable, but it's very important when used properly. So what maqasid means to understand why, to understand the why behind the laws. Why did Allah make certain things halal? Why did He make other things haram? And then to use that to formulate your opinions for new issues. So, for example, how do we develop our understanding, the Islamic understanding of environmentalism? Well, we go back to the maqasid of Sharia. Is preserving the environment part of the goals of the Sharia? Well, if it is, then we are going to formulate new rulings accordingly, right? Same with how we deal with pollution. So the maqasid plays its role in fiqh, but the problem here is, again, this is a rational source of fiqh. So there's going to be differences of opinion in what are the maqasid, how they are applied, what they are applied to, when they are applied, and what are the boundaries of the application. And I think this is one of the main areas where you're going to find the most differences of opinion today, right? When it comes to the application of maqasid al-sharia. There are other ways that people approach fiqh as well. So we have the issue of things remaining as they are until proven otherwise, istishabul hal. So for example, we have in this al-aslu fil ashay al-ibaha, the original state of things is permissibility. So things remain permissible until proven prohibited, or people remain innocent until proven guilty. This is from the methodologies of fiqh. Uh, we also have the qawaid al-fiqhiyah, the maxims of fiqh, which is a basically what the maxims of fiqh are. Is they uh, summarize fatwa, right? Where the fatwas are summarized into easy to remember sentences, and each of these sentences apply to thousands of different cases. So, for example, a fatwa like harm must be eliminated, or actions are judged by their intentions. These are maxims. You can literally apply it to 1,000 different things. There are 1,000 different things in which the action is judged by its intentions. There are 1,000 different things that are prohibited because harm must be eliminated, right? So these are called the qawaid, or the qawaidi approach to fiqh, which is also something that is there. So how does fiqh work? Well, fiqh simply is that when someone asks a scholar a question, or when something new arises, the scholar is going to look at all of these things. They're going to look at the Quran. They're going to look at the Sunnah. They're going to look at the ijma. They're going to make qiyas. They're going to consider the maqasid. They're going to consider the urf. They're going to look at the qawaid. And after looking at all of this, it's a very scientific approach. They are going to arrive at a conclusion. Now, because of how diverse people are in the understandings of all these different areas, there are going to be diverse conclusions. And sometimes the individual's conclusions are going to change over time. So, if you look at the example let's look at an example of where fiqh changed recently and everybody's opinion changed without anyone realizing. Videos, right? So when I was a kid, everyone told us videos are haram. And that was the standard opinion in our community. Videos are haram. There's no such thing as Islamic videos. Yet today, there are people who still hold to that, but they are a very small minority. The vast majority of Muslims have absolutely no issue watching Islamic videos. It wouldn't even cross their mind that it's something haram. So there it's not just the fiqh of an individual that changed, it's the fiqh of the majority that changed. And that's not the first time that happened. That happened many times. Before the videos, it was the same thing with the radio. It was the same thing with the printing press. Believe it or not, it was even the same thing with coffee. That some people said it's haram, everybody latched onto that, and eventually over time, people's views changed, and people began to say, hold on, it's not really haram, is it? There's no actual haram elements there. So why do people's fiqh opinions change? Well, number one is, of course, growth in knowledge, right? That people's knowledge is growing. So, if I look at my own journey, in my first 7 years of studies, I studied Hanafi fiqh. and that too only one specific type of Hanafi fiqh. So even back then, I wasn't aware myself that there are different versions of Hanafi fiqh out there. There's Turkish Hanafi fiqh, there's the Iraqi Hanafi fiqh, there's what I learned, the Deobandi Hanafi fiqh, the Barelvi Hanafi fiqh. There's all these different versions of Hanafi fiqh out there, and I was just taught one version of it, and I was just taught that that's Hanafi fiqh and that's what you've got to follow. So I came out from there knowing all of this Hanafi fiqh, this entire book cover to cover, but that's really not even a drop in the ocean of fiqh. I haven't studied other perspectives of Hanafi fiqh. I haven't studied the fiqhs of the other madhabs yet. Haven't even heard about at that point. By the age of 20, I hadn't even heard about Maqasid al-Sharia or Qawaid al-Fiqhiyah yet. So I leave and I start to study. I start studying with Shafi'i scholars. I start studying with Salafi scholars. I start studying with Hanbali scholars. Eventually, I even get to spend time with some Maliki scholars as well. And during my studies, people introduce me to terms like Maqasid and Qawaid. Someone gives me a copy of Ibn Ashur's book of Maqasid to read. Someone else helps me to sign up for a course on Qawaid al-Fiqhiyah. And as all of this is coming in, my understanding of fiqh is starting to change. So of course, if when I was 20 years old, if you asked me a question, even though I was technically a graduate of an Islamic institute at that age, the opinion that I would have given you then would be very ignorant compared to the opinion that I would give you now. And I have a feeling the opinion I give you now would be rather ignorant compared to what I would be knowing in 10 or 20 years time if Allah allows us to live that long and to keep studying His religion. The point is that our knowledge is growing all the time. And when I finished studying at 7 years, I then went on to do a 4-year bachelor's in Islamic studies with Salafi ulama. I then spent time privately studying with Shafi ulama, with Hanbali ulama. I even attended some of the halaqah of some Maliki ulama. I even bought Ibn Hazm's book on Zahiri fiqh and read it just to get familiar with Zahiri fiqh. I even read the book on Zaydi fiqh. And as you study all these different perspectives and you put it together and you begin to cross-study and cross-analyze, your opinions will change. You'll begin to realize on certain issues the Hanafis are right, on other issues the Shafis are right, on other issues the Malikis are right. It's not just a black and white matter of everybody, it's that this madhab's right and everything everybody else is wrong. Another reason that that the scholar's opinions is going to change is that their knowledge of the actual world is going to change, right? So sometimes it's not knowledge about the religion that changes, but it's knowledge about the world. So, for example, someone who is studying in a institute where they are taught that all they're taught is that vaccinations are invented by the kuffar to put impurities into our body. That individual is going to graduate from there holding the opinion that vaccinations are haram, right? And this is something that happens in our time. But as the individual lives life, they meet Muslim doctors, they interact with them, they have conversations with them, they get to learn what vaccinations really are, what really goes into it, what the real purpose is. Eventually, they're going to realize that what they learned when they were younger was wrong, and that vaccinations are not just halal, but they are important. So their opinion is going to change, not because their knowledge of the deen changed, but because their knowledge of the real world changed. And this is another area where a lot of people they don't see this happening. So, for example, they see someone graduating from Medina or from Darul Uloom Deoband or from Al Azhar, and they get into the community and they preach certain opinions, and then 5 or 10 years later, that same individual is preaching a completely different opinion, and the average person who watches this is shocked. They're like, "Na'uzu billah, how can he change his opinion? What is wrong with him? He's been he's been modernist and he's a liberal, or he's an extremist, or he's been influenced by the kuffar." But if you actually sit with a person and ask them, why did you change your opinion on this issue? Very often, you will get a response that is grounded in reality, grounded in usul al-fiqh, and grounded in that person's own maturity and growth and experience. It's not just as the other person wants to think that that individual wanted to change the religion. No, he's not changing the religion. Again, we have to separate fiqh from the religion. Fiqh is people's opinions. So if someone changes their opinion, they're not changing the religion. They're just changing their opinion, their understanding of the religion. Again, it's a very simplistic idea that some people have that fiqh is the religion. And when someone changes their fiqh opinion, they are changing the religion. They're not. They're not. Fiqh is human understanding. And human understanding changes. It evolves over time. It matures over time. That I may hold to an opinion today, that I may consider nonsensical in 10 years' time. That's just the nature of fiqh. And the beauty of it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts all of it from us. Meaning, whatever opinion I'm currently holding to, that's what Allah will judge me by. And if I had to change my opinion in the future, then from that point onward, Allah will judge me by those opinions. Right? Because Allah is Ar-Rahman, He is most merciful. And whether our ijtihad is right or wrong, He will give us our reward based on our sincerity and our efforts. So it's not that big deal that a lot of people think about. Sometimes when there's someone out there who you're looking at and you're like angry with them for changing their opinions, I highly recommend reaching out to them, sitting down with them, and talking to them. Why did you change your opinion about this? And you will find very often that they have really good reasons for doing so. Good reasons that are grounded in the usul al-fiqh, and they come from a place of sincerity. And I want to end with a metaphor. I don't really know if this metaphor will help and whether it's that good, but it's a metaphor I came up with when I was writing about this topic. The metaphor is, imagine fiqh like a tree. So you have all your branches. Your branches are like tahara, salah, fasting, zakah, business, marriage, and the leaves are your fatawa. Right? Your leaves are the fatawa. So something being halal, something being haram, something being makruh. These are your fatawa. You come down the stem. It's grounded. It's got this trunk, this firm trunk of the Quran and Sunnah, and the maqasid al-Sharia. And at the very bottom you have your roots, and your roots are your usul al-fiqh. So maybe that's where the Quran and Sunnah will go as well, and also ijma, qiyas, all of that is their roots. So based on those roots, you come into certain fatwas. Now, you see what happens when the fatwa changes. Just say, for example, someone is of the opinion that, let's try and not think of a controversial opinion. I think whatever examples that come into your mind is going to make people angry. Try and think of something that won't make people angry. Okay, let's go with this. Covering the head. So just say, if I was 20-year-old and I say that for a man to cover his head is wajib, which by the way is opinion some of my teachers held. And now 30-year-old me is saying a man doesn't need to cover his head. So what the average Muslim sees is that the leaf on the tree changed color. The leaf on the tree was red and it changed to green, right? Haram to halal. So all they see is the changing of the color of the leaves. They don't see what's going on internally within the tree, starting at the very roots. That at the very roots, the roots are strengthening as our knowledge is growing. And the roots are realigning. That person based this opinion on blind following his teachers. That his teachers told him wearing a hat is wajib, so he believed it's wajib. But now his new opinion is grounded in Quran and Sunnah and Usul al-Fiqh and Al-Ibahat al-Asliya and in all of these different principles. So now there's a stronger roots. And because of the stronger roots, the red leaf became green. So people just see the leaf changing color. They just see the fatwa changing. They don't see everything that happened behind the scenes. They don't see the 10 years of study. They don't see all the thinking. They don't see all the dua. They don't see everything else, all the application of the usul. All they see is the end result. And they jump to their own conclusions about why did the leaf change its color. They jump to their own conclusions about why did the halal become haram, or why did the haram become halal. And the conclusion people jump to is he's changing the religion. He's following his nafs. He is, trying to please the West or whatever it is. While in reality, all that happened was someone studied sincerely for the sake of Allah across a variety of madhabs for 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years. And across that period, their roots deepened, the trunk grew stronger, and the leaves changed. So the next time you see a scholar whose opinions have changed in fiqh, firstly have husnul zan of that scholar, have good thoughts about that scholar, assume the best about them. And if you can, reach out to them, ask them why. Most of the time there's a good reason. It's true there are some individuals who are misguided. There are some individuals who are misguiding others. That's just the reality of life. May Allah guide them and forgive them. But I have found that the majority of people whose opinions have changed and who other people are judging for changing their opinions, the majority of them are sincere, and that change comes from a place of growth, from a place of knowledge, from a place of wisdom, from a place of experience. It's not coming from what the average person assumes it's coming from. So I hope this benefited you. I hope that it helps you to understand a bit more of how fiqh works, why people's fiqh opinions change, why people differ with each other, why people sometimes seem to contradict themselves, saying one thing at one age, something else at another age. I really hope that this helps us to understand each other better, to tolerate each other better, and to have good thoughts about our scholars. May Allah forgive us our mistakes, accept our good deeds. May He guide us to the best of opinions on all issues, and may He keep us firmly grounded upon that which is pleasing to Him. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.